overall, we all want to get better at songwriting as quickly as possible. So in this video, we are going to talk about the main ways I think you can level up your music writing specifically. There will be another video for the lyric writing side of things. But in this video, we're talking about how to level up your music writing as fast as possible. Some of you are not going to like what I think is step one of getting better at music writing, and that is to learn basic foundational music theory. I'll give you what the three most basic things are that I think you really need to learn that are music theory. But first, let me just clarify, music theory is not the same as knowing how to read sheet music. Let me say that again. Knowing music theory has nothing to do with knowing how to read sheet music. They are at best tangentially connected, but they really have almost nothing to do with each other. And seemingly almost everybody conflates these two. And I think that's why so many people are so against, like,
oh, I don't want to learn music theory. Music theory is not going to be helpful for songwriting.
I think most of those people, what they're really saying is, I don't want to learn how to read sheet music because I'm never going to use that when I songwrite, which I actually would agree with that. The problem is that they're conflating it with music theory and not understanding, no. Music theory is very, 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 very helpful knowledge for understanding how to write music and understanding the theory behind how music makes you feel the way you feel. Like understanding that the reason why the chorus feels like it explodes and the pre-chorus really feels like it's just leading to the chorus and it doesn't sound resolved and it feels like, okay, this is going somewhere, and then boom, the chorus comes and oh, wow, this is clearly the main point. Knowing music theory is knowing how they accomplish that and knowing how you can replicate that. It's understanding something like, oh, if I don't use my one chord in my pre-chorus, and then I have a one chord at the beginning of my chorus, and I end my pre-chorus on a 5 chord, which leads most powerfully to the one chord, that's a great way to create that effect. That's what music theory knowledge is, which is super useful because it informs us how to compose music to elicit a certain response. Has nothing to do with reading sheet music. So anyway, the three things that I really think you need to know are keys, chords, and chord progressions. I won't go too deep into this because I've taught it in other videos. You can check those out, and you can check out my free guide on the 4 pillars of music theory that I think every songwriter needs to know. That also teaches intervals, which is really at the basis of these 3 that I'm talking about with chords, chord progressions, and keys. But these are really the big 3 or big 4 that you absolutely have to know that will get you like 80% of the results. Because if you sit down to improvise or something, you will know, okay, I'm in C major. Here are all the notes I have. Here are all the chords I have, as well as the job of each of these chords, how a G major chord will sound in the context of C major versus how a G major chord would sound in the context of D major or in G major. It has a different job in all those keys, and understanding basic music theory helps you to understand that and then leverage that into how you play and how you write your music. So just at a high level, keys will give you an understanding of all the different notes you have at your disposal. So if you have a song that you're writing and you find out, okay, this seems to be sort of in the key of D major, then you know, okay, the notes that I'm going to have in all my chords and all my melody notes, with some exceptions maybe if you're using some altered chords, but like 98% to 100% of your notes are probably going to be just the notes in that key. So you know, okay, D major has D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, and C sharp. Those are the notes I have. And then understanding chords in the context of keys, I already sort of talked about that. It's really just understanding that a G major chord in the context of D major actually would sound very different than a G major chord in the context of C major, because in the context of D major, it's a 4 chord. In the context of C major, it's a 5 chord. And the job and the sound of a 4 chord and a 5 chord in major keys are different. And then chord progressions, I already alluded to. That's the idea of understanding that a 5 chord most powerfully wants to go to the 1 chord. It really, really, really wants to go to that 1 chord. So when you understand that, you can utilize that knowledge to, for example, maybe decide to go to a 5 chord and then not go to the 1 chord, so that you're sort of tricking the listener or making the listener think, oh, this is going somewhere, but then, oh, plot twist, I went to a 6 chord instead of a 1 chord, and that can really complement a plot twist in your lyrics. Or you can give the listener what they are expecting, which is to go to that 1 chord, and again, do that intentionally because you're saying this is the main point of the song. So I'm going to go from 5 to one and deliver the main point of the song. So after you learn foundational theory, you'll now have all the knowledge you need in order to be better at improvising, which is my number 2 advice, which is simply to practice and get better at improvising. Generally speaking, if it isn't already, then as of right now, effective immediately, improvisation should become a part of your instrument practice routine as well as your songwriting routine. Because really, improvisation tends to be at the heart of songwriting. For the most part, songs start something like you're sitting at a piano or with your guitar and you're just noodling around, you're just playing around, you're improvising, and then eventually you stumble upon something where you're like, oh, that's actually really cool what I just did. Let me see what more I can do with it. Let me iterate on that. Let me see if I can make it even better. And then I'm going to maybe record that onto my phone so I don't forget the idea, because I don't want to have to write it down, because who wants to write sheet music? Even though music theory is important because they're different. Just saying. But we want to record it onto our phone just so that we can listen back and be like, oh yeah, that's what I came up with at 12:01 last night that I definitely wasn't going to remember in the morning, no matter how good it was. So then from there, we usually build a song off of that. We can do the same thing with things like bass lines, or with piano riffs, or with a guitar hook. Maybe we were practicing some soloing and we stumbled upon a really cool little riff that we liked, and then we build a song off of that. Usually that's how songs start, with some sort of song seed that we usually find while we are improvising. Really a great way to think of it is when we're improvising, we're essentially exploring, we're looking, we're searching for an idea that is worthy of developing into a full song. And overall, if you can improvise well, then you're going to be able to more efficiently find more and more good song seeds that then makes it so that your standard of how good a song seed needs to be even worthy of spending time developing into a full song goes way up. Because if you are not good at improvising because you don't know any music theory and you just play random notes and it all sounds terrible and you don't know what you're doing, if you spend an hour improvising, you might get 5 minutes of music that sounded kind of good. So then probably you spend a whole hour, you're going to develop one of those ideas in that 5 minutes into a song. But the probability that those musical ideas that just sounded okay that you stumbled upon are going to be any good is pretty low. But if you're good at improvising, which means that you have the prerequisite of you understand basic music theory like keys and chord progressions, then it's going to be way, 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 way easier to find great ideas, because when you improvise for an hour, the whole hour is going to sound good. So it's going to be what sounded great in that hour. For me, and it's not that I'm great at piano or anything, but I'm a competent pianist and I know my music theory. So I can just sit and play piano indefinitely and it all will sound good. But the beauty of that is if my default is like, yeah, okay, I've made some pretty stuff up, whatever, then the best 5 minutes from the hour of improvisation that I might take and develop into a song is going to be really good, compared to the 5 minutes from the person that only had 5 minutes of decent music that they just happened to come across because they didn't understand basic music theory or they weren't very good at improvising. So add improvising to your practice routine and to your songwriting routine. Make sure you are practicing improvisation. It's very important for songwriting. And then the third one is continue to learn music theory. The 3 pillars or 4 pillars, depending on how you want to look at it, are the most important. They're sort of the 20% that get you 80% of the results. So if you want to 80-20 rule that crap, then grab my free guide, learn the 4 pillars of music theory, and call it a day. But honestly, what you need to do after you've done that and after you've practiced improvisation is to start leveling up your theory. Learn things like modes, sus chords, and add chords, and 7th chords, and what those can get you. Also learning to leverage things like borrowed chords is going to be super important to leveling up the music that you can write even more, so that your competence as a music writer becomes closer and closer to people like Hans Zimmer and real legit music composers that most songwriters don't even approach that level. So it's not necessary, but it certainly is very, very helpful and makes songwriting even more fun.